Hello there, and welcome to the Camo Net Podcast. This is episode 13. I am your host, Bambi Sandy. You'll notice not the stereotypical background. In fact, the picture seems to be moving. I am currently on the edge, towards the end, of or a break from the game. Gotta maintain sanity, and I talk all this shit about avoiding burnout, so gotta live it, love it. Uh, it's a bit of work, not a ton, but it's just a little bit of work to take a good screenshot and build out the border and do the lettering and stuff like that for what's primarily an audio podcast. Anyways, I guarantee that people just listen to this thing. They set it in a separate tab and then they kind of just let it go. So I am taking a risk with sort of a one-off episode not having like a nice card in the background. So that'll be fine. That'll be fine. And I just want to make a note here that I've got a couple of people that are frequently available to be co-hosts, and nothing against those people. First of all, they don't watch these, so if if you think I'm talking about you, it's inherently not you. Uh, it's hard to find people that know what the fuck they're talking about. I mean, obviously, it's an opinion on whether or not I know what I'm talking about, but it's hard to find people that go through and watch the recordings of the matches and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I mean, knowing what they're talking about. So the value of having a co-host, if they're not going to be able to have their own like set of notes and stuff, if they're just going to be replying to what I say, yes sir, no sir, sort of a thing, then what's really the value? And then two, even on that. The people that are available from day to day are only available during really specific times, and a good bit of getting a good recording for these is being in the right mood and having the right flow. So it's just easier to sort of do these things, and that's how they're going to be with me shooting from the hip, like I am with this video. Got my little pre-written not disclaimer bit, but like intro bit, but we're just got bullet points and subjects to talk about, and we're just going to kind of roll with it. Uh, or it might be something where I'm trying to make a specific point, so I have to go through and I have to outline all of my points and stuff for each subject. So just gonna kind of be that way until I can find someone that gives a damn quite like I do. So, anyways, getting this sort of intro bit out of the way, we are with a group called Camo Net Supremacy, covering Arma Reforger and the competitive community for the game, though we'll be expanding to other games in the genre, such as Hell Let Loose and Squad. It's going to start happening pretty soon, by the way. If you represent a team in the competitive community for Arma Reforger, or if you're with a group of people that would like to get into the competitive scene as a team, join the Discord using the link in the description below. Likewise, if you're simply interested in following the scene further or want to talk to the people who are participating, that's fine as well. The Discord is meant to stand as a neutral space for any team or individual that fancies themselves as a competitive player, regardless of skill level, hour count, or opinions on various topics. So, if you have 3,000 hours in the game and all you do is fly a helicopter around, you can join and you will not be removed for telling infantry players what they're doing wrong. You'll be wrong, but that's fine. You're allowed to be wrong. There's no, no, I already said that. No, I didn't. There's no association with any particular team, tournament, or server. You can use the Discord as a networking tool to keep in touch with like-minded people for scheduling scrimmages or for generally talking about things going on in the scene without fear of being banned or censored for wrong think. If you join and don't want people to reach out to you in direct messages, simply adjust your Discord settings to ignore messages from people who aren't friends. Camo Net Supremacy is a collective media project / community for the scene and won't ever host its own tournament. We feature bi-monthly community debates over the balance of the game or the competitive scene itself, along with match analysis videos and obviously the podcast. Our content doesn't feature crazy overlays or editing purposefully, so aside from technical issues and bits on the front and back end of the recordings, we leave everything in the middle for transparency. I really wish I could kind of shorten that sentence, but it's already been shortened like several times. So I think that's kind of what it's got to be. Um, I've gotten the comments a couple of times through DMs on Discord, by the way, for chapters on the videos. That will never come to these podcast episodes, and probably won't come to the match analysis videos either, because you're not, if you're not here to, if you only care, if you're listening to this recording and you're waiting for the seventh subject, which is me talking about the update, there's probably some better people that could tell you about the update that have shorter videos. You know what I'm saying? And then the match analysis videos, sort of the same thing. The whole subject of those videos is my commentary on all of the match and how things feed into one piece or another, right? So you shouldn't be watching those videos to find a specific moment or my explicit thoughts on this one gunfight that happened on the side of this hill, if that kind of makes sense. So, lots to talk about with this episode. A little bit of a broad stroke, as opposed to making this or deciding to do a podcast episode like I have in the past over a specific update or thing that's going on. We are on our third, pretty sure, weekend of ARCL Season 2. I think it's the third, maybe the fourth. Should be the third. I don't even know. So we're going to talk about what's going well, what's not going well, or what could use some improvement. Some demographics and team breakdown stuff, and then the pacing for the matches. Secondly, talk about the current thoughts on team performance. So, macro and then micro, what people are doing and what's kind of interesting there. Some of the issues that are coming with map scaling between Evron and Arland. Match analysis, kind of overarching purpose and intent. I say it in each of those videos, but I still get feedback that makes me think that I gotta double tap it. Some stuff that needs to happen, won't ever happen, and should happen with the scene, the competitive scene that is. Touch on the update, the inevitable, what I'm going to call fall of quality of life with the game in the lead up to Arma 4. It's inevitable. And then some of the Bambi events that are set to happen for 2026, so the rest of the year, and then 2027 moving forward. So circling back in, this episode shouldn't be long, which I say every single recording, don't I? So we're well into ARCL Season 2. There's been a handful of 10v10 matches and a handful of 20v20 matches, but some of the 2020v matches weren't supposed to be 20. It was 15v15. It's just a little shaky. We've got a different map for 10v10s, but 15v15s still play on Everon, which is a little inconsistent, I would say. It's not necessarily good or bad, but consistency is a nebulous term. So getting into what I think is good so far. The timings and the distance between the objectives on Everon, really good, really well thought out. You have enough time. If you lose Montadak and if you're coming from the south side of the map, you have enough time to reset on Fagari and mount a reasonable defense. Even if you haven't built up, your point prior to Montanak. But you also don't have 9 million years to do that. So if you shit the bed or you're not on the ball, or if people pre-position, for a leapfrog, then you still have to contend with that. And I think that works out really well. I haven't seen, for the match analysis videos, I watch each match completely through, taking notes on various things as I go through. Maybe it would be more sane to just stop the recording, 2-hour matches. I just stop it 3 million times as it's going. But sometimes you got to be in a specific mind state to catch certain stuff that happens in the matches. So you'll go through and you'll do like your general narrative and build out all the timestamps from a technical perspective, and then you'll go back through and then you'll try to do narrative for those, whatever. Anyways, um, so there's I've in going through to find things to explicitly critique and give ups to pretend that I'm a youngling, that I'm hip. That's never been something that I could latch onto. It always seems to work out really fantastic. That is not the case for Ireland, though. The objectives are need to be just a little bit further from each other, um, for the 10v10s. Just because your active defense will often just blend into your offense for the next objective. And I think that those should be two separate tasks. Your people that are doing defense, because one of the ways that you can do defense, if you know exactly where the enemy is going to come from, is by screening, right? It means that you don't have to cover the east, the west, or the north side. If you know that the enemy is coming from the south, then you can just cast a really large net and have people stand in certain bushes and certain berms, watching certain roads, etc., to the south, and then so you don't want that to just be, oh well, we're basically already on the next objective, so we'll just push those people forward. um, a bit of the charm of this idea, whatever the hell it is, even for 10v10 sizes, should be multitasking and putting on display people's decision making, consequences, trade-offs, right? It shouldn't just play like a team deathmatch match, really. Uh, which is funny because that's what it is, if only the objectives matter. So that's something that I thought was going pretty good for everyone and is a little lackluster for Ireland. I'd like to see some further play testing and feeling out of that, some additional balancing for season 3, perhaps. Um, the weapon balance seems to be going pretty well. It does not look like there's an overpowered weapon in particular, or two or three. Light machine guns, obviously, just as a base game component, dynamic, whatever, are overpowered because you give someone a 200 round belt with a saw that has almost no recoil. And why would you ever pick an ordinary rifle if everyone on your team can have the light machine gun? So at some point, you know, obviously I'm not super privy to the rule changes or whatever that have happened since like the first match, for instance. So they could have gone back on it, made an inclusion, made a change that I don't know about. It doesn't seem like weapon variety is an issue, which inherently means that it has to be forced. Because if you give everyone an opportunity to run around with light machine guns and sniper rifles, they'll do it. So if it's not happening with such consistency between all these matches and teams that have never talked to each other before, never played with each other, then that means it must be on purpose, which is good. Not going to complain about that by any means. That would just give you an incredibly boring match. What's not going well on that same subject, though, is that just everyone's playing with fucking giant sniper rifle scopes, like giant ass LPVOs with like red dots on top. Like, nah. And I think that, to be fair, I don't know what it's like to play in these matches. I know what it's like to watch from the recordings, though it's fucking boring as hell because every exchange is either a one hit kill or a two hit kill from 500 meters, or it's a hip fire. You killed the guy with the third bullet, but you're continuing to spray him for some reason. Maybe that's just the lag, but there's no consequence. There's no trade offs. There's no variation. There's no bits in the middle. It's either hyper efficient up close or it's hyper efficient from a long distance, which, you know, whatever. What are we going to do about that? Um, so that's a thing. Um, Specific things that I don't think are going well that could really use some improvement. For season 3, I'd like to see. So my understanding at the beginning of the matches, once your teams had time to like set up their loadouts and all that stuff, and you're just waiting for the start time. When the start time comes, you just go. It doesn't seem like there's a check to make sure that both teams are like, "You ready? You ready?" and go. Um, if I'm wrong and that's not the case, then don't listen to me there. Something that I for sure have noticed and would like to see changed for season 3 is ask each team what vehicles they want starting out. Place them, like have someone spawn them in, or they can spawn them in and position them, whatever. But then they have to shut the engines off. Set it so that way it's like either a running start. What is that, Le Mans style, where you like start outside the car and then you have to get in the car, right? Or just squad style. Make it so that way people can get into the vehicles, but they can't start them. You don't need a bot for that. You don't need a command. Just have someone in admin cam sitting there, just listening for engine audio, and just enforce it that way. Because there's an incredible amount of disparity in team rollouts, and there just really shouldn't be. A lot of the timings for like Montanak or just everyone in general are really tight. So it would be nice to see you look over like the Nomad and Spit match. Hopefully I'm not saying the wrong. That's the one that was recorded, right? I think. Yeah. How the fuck am I aiming it at? Anyways, you watch over like the first recorded match that was that Sunday. And if oh no, it was TTT versus Spit and Nomad was the match that wasn't recorded. TTT and Dutch Tactical Gamers was the first recorded match, right? One of those teams, if they'd have just had like a quicker or on the ball, everyone's like, you spawn in the vehicles and then everyone just immediately hops in and then you go, right? That would have changed the beginning of the match in some significant ways for that. Especially when you're talking about like it was TTT that drove through Montanak, right, and saw the helicopter that had just dropped off people. Like if that timing was tighter, then they could have caught the helicopter coming in as opposed to going out. That might be a shit example, but you get what I'm saying, right? Standardization should be sort of the highlight of a tournament versus a scrimmage, right? Where everything's just a little bit more official and there's less chance to fuck something up, right? Something else that I would like to see better, and I think you're already seeing teams burn out for it, is that you just play one instance for 2 hours. It was the first 10v10 match on God, so what they did, they're doing 10v10s on Saturdays and then 20v20s on Sundays, right? So who was the first 10v10 match? That was yeah, I don't fucking know. None of these teams talk to me anyways. So that first 10v10 match on Arland, multiple times, one specific team just kept hitting trees and killing drivers and killing people in the vehicles. That fucking sucks. But and that has nothing to do with skill. It just frustrates everyone involved. Sometimes there's lag with the game and shit that you just can't control. Sometimes like there is just one guy on your team that's a shit driver and he fucks it for everyone in the logistics truck, for instance, or like that TTT match where the TTT driver. No, it was yeah, no, Dutch Tech Gamers, whatever the fuck. Anyways, there was one of those matches where there was a logistics driver that was driving into Montanak after the town had already been taken. That guy, fucking, because the other team just stole the Logi and resupplied now their point with those supplies. So there's a universe where the other team was able to get it back if they didn't have those supplies. If you play two instances, hey, we're going to play these teams, the start time is going to be the same. The run time total is going to be the same. We're going to play through for an hour. And then at an hour, we're going to fucking switch the teams. It'll be like a best of two or something. You would have to change the win conditions, surely, which I'm already a proponent of because just who controls the last objective at the end of 2 hours is fucking ridiculous. But um, you're going to get significantly less team burnout throughout the course of the tournament and just in general for the scene if that's a norm. So I'm going to say it now, so that way I can point back to me saying it now 3 years from now and go, look at that. I said that. So it'd be nice to see that as an addition or a change. The team breakdowns and the demographics has been really interesting. And by interesting, I mean not super interesting. I guess I just wrote that as an additional sort of like a side comment about uh, the variation in squad density and roles, right? Because I've talked to maybe 4 or 5 teams so far since I was banned from the RCL Discord, anyways, that are participating, and they've all said the same thing. 2 of them have played already, and then 3 of them have not. They're still waiting. Everyone has said that their kind of internal milsim structure is going to mandate, to a degree, grenadier roles and AT roles and helicopter pilots and stuff. People that are explicitly looking to play logistics, right? But even from the teams that don't have that rigid structure where people are very kind of obviously tactically anyways, just kind of doing whatever the fuck they want. They all ride in the same vehicle to Montagnard, but then they kind of just do whatever, You see that from that angle as well. So that's been neat to see. If I had a nickel for every time someone with a grenadier roll or an underbarrel grenade launcher got a kill with it, instead of just using their ordinary weapon, I think I'd have 5 nickels, to be honest. It's just an afterthought. It's like something that just looks good on paper. Whereas everyone on the team having a rocket launcher, fuck, you can pay people to not use those. There's so many instances of people that like shot at vehicles that were way off in the distance or up close that they just had no business doing. They would have gotten the kills, way more consistently and easier if they just shot them with their ordinary gun. So I just a kind of a comment on that. And then the pacing for the matches. Even though on Evron the objectives are fairly close together, and how you design your map or how you select which objectives people are going to be fighting over has pacing and what you're showcasing for the match in mind. Because obviously, if the map was a fucking desert and you set your objectives in such a way that sniping was advantageous, or that all the objectives were in the middle of giant sand bowls and you could snipe onto those objectives from 9 miles away, then you're going to showcase slower, more deliberate, positioning play. It's about like setting up for the angle or the building that can overlook that objective more than it is getting to the building that overlooks that objective or getting onto the objective, right? So that sort of what should be a throwaway comment aside. There's a pacing and I won't say a quality of life issue, but for sure a pacing issue. And I think that's born out of a couple of different places. I think that you're seeing that because the bracket was seated in such a way where you have one fantastic team just curb stomping the other team. Not just from a performance standpoint, but even from like not from an active performance standpoint, I should say, but from like an idle performance standpoint, right? Like I just watched through the match that happened today, I guess, right? Recorded 2 hours ago. Between who the fuck was it? Hold on. Roman goblins, right? Goblins had, not that I'm calling them out, but if you don't like me mentioning your name, eat a fucking dick. Goblins had absolutely zero strategy whatsoever in any way, shape, or form, and then Rome just they even at idle, they were buddy pairing and pushing into buildings together and all that stuff, right? So skill disparities even on that kind of fundamental basic level um, make for like, all right, big push into Montanak, and they're all dead. And now we're gonna wait 25 minutes for the next, you know, substantial push. Oh, they're coming back in with a helicopter, and the helicopter got blown up. All right, so now we're just waiting. And Goblins is never going to push back onto Montanak. Got ya. Interesting. All right. Cool. Crazy. I think there's an issue there. I think that it's an issue that can be fixed for season 3. However, the fuck they want to do some soul searching and try to address that issue is obviously up to them. But you gotta start with admitting that there's a problem. Now, moving into thoughts on sort of like micro team performance. I've said it in multiple places, so I'm just gonna say it again. The finals are going to be Rome against 63E. Not only is there a European component there, Europeans are just always going to care more about everything, and it's a fucking joke. The North American scene is has always been a joke to a large degree compared to the European scene with competitive in games. North America is usually propped up in every other game by South America, right? You just call it the Americas. Convenient. Um, so that's I'd be willing to put money on that's going to be the finals. Um, Rome from the match today looked pretty good. I definitely think that. Well, actually, no. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to pick favorites. I'm not going to pick between 63E and Rome. But they're both. They don't struggle for numbers. They're a great example in that sense of a community or a quote unquote greater community um, that's got 300 people that are active in the Discord that are playing throughout a given month, maybe not at any given time, but and they're actually able to make those percentages work. The joke with competitive from squad is I've got 300 people in my Discord and I can only get 10 signups to this 36v36 because you're working with sort of like um, exponentially diminishing returns because like 50% of your player base is like on vacation or has real life stuff going on. 50% of your player base, would rather schedule stuff with their friends than play the game, even though they committed to joining a competitive team for the game, which comes with it like an implicit requirement that you're going to play the game. And then there's people that like burn out at different rates and whatever the fuck. Anyway, so I just wanted to give that a little bit of context in case someone reaches out and doesn't understand what the fuck I'm talking about there. But so in it's weird, especially coming from squad where uh, I guess it was better and I just never knew. Grass is always greener on the other side. um then you find out that it was spray painted dead grass, uh because in squad even the worst teams in the scene were only technically bad. Everyone knew how to do rollouts. Everyone knew the importance of like being on the objective, being poignant, being present, not doodling off way the fuck over here. Not just pushing into the objective by yourself, waiting for at least one other person to be near you, at least on the map. Obviously, in squad, you can check the map to see, like, all right, there's a guy behind me, 10 feet, or there's a guy coming up the hill. I'm good to push. You can't really do that in Reforger, but yeah, everyone sort of had that shared framework, and that just doesn't seem to exist in this. Goblins got fucking wildly outclassed. Which again is not a specific dig at goblins. I just don't think that Rome and goblins should even exist in the same bracket. That might be rude. That's the fucking truth. Because again, like the idle performance of Rome is just not conceptually anywhere near what Goblins is doing, even if Goblins has some really good shooters. There's just, you can tell that Goblins like isn't a real team. It's just a coalition with a name. It's just a collective of a bunch of random people that didn't know each other 2 days ago. So, you know, eh, eh. Do I sound tired? Um, I think it's also interesting too, even from some of the good teams. Like I saw some people from DTG during their match that very obviously have some self-reflecting and some stuff to look at if they watch their own match recordings anyways. Otherwise they're not going to know. If you're a squad lead or you know a bunch of squad leads that don't even watch their own matches over, fucking remove those people, dude. That's just like, even if it's a 2 hour match, listen to it and then look at your phone while you're doing something else. If a big highlight moment comes up, you can follow the narrative from the caster. Um, give like 1% of a fuck. Anyways, um, there are some individuals that seriously need to evaluate what their sound settings are. Because like the DTG versus TTT match, I feel like that was a different match. I feel like that was. I could just fucking look, I guess. Mm, I thought DTG played against someone else. Tack Grew, that's what it was. Oh my god. Ugh, man, rough. TTT versus Rubber Band Rangers was what it was. Man, I'm sorry about that. That's rough. I thought my memory was going to be better with these team names, but nope, it's just map stuff. Um, there were multiple moments in I think the Rubber Band Rangers match where like guys are in the same bush moving around. Like, what's your sound? What's your effects volume at? 5%. What are we doing? Are we listening to music like while we're playing the game during the competitive match? Do that shit during a scrimmage. Not don't do it in the tournament. So those people need to do some figuring out. Hopefully their squad leads or whoever can push those people to greater performance. Skill disparities between the teams, already touched on that. Bush play and automatic fire is still the only thing that matters. Yeah, because no one's using explosives. Hypothetically, it would be explosives because then you're not shooting tracers, right? So no one's technically seeing where it's coming from. But you can clear out big clumps of bushes and command tents and buildings and stuff. But no one seems to want to spam the GLs, quite like automatic fire. Um, it is the eternal, for as long as you allow everyone to have a fully automatic weapon and tracer ammo, it's actually a double negative of a statement. If you're not abusing that and it's the clear meta, then you're actually just fucking over your team. But also, that shouldn't exist. So it's a double negative in either direction. It's bad for the scene, and if you're not doing it while it's allowed, what are you doing? Um, Map scaling between numbers on Evron and numbers on Arland, right? So there was an instance where GSA and who was it? ACR played but they only had 15 and 15. So they had so they had stated in the announcement for the bracket, uh, which my recording is still for some reason the only recording of that. They had announced that 20v20s. So there was originally supposed to be three brackets: heavyweight, middleweight, lightweight. Lightweight was 10v10, middleweight was 20v20, and then heavy was for teams that could bring more than 20 people. So 25v25, 30v30, 35v35, whatever people wanted. At no point was it ever said that you could bring 15 people to a 20v20 and then that sort of shared equal numbers philosophy would apply as well. The insinuation or the concept there is if you don't have 20 people and you signed up for the 20v20s, then you don't play, right? um it's just a weird integrity thing, both for the bracket and for like your own rules. Like, what does that say about future instances where like something is lopsided? What does that say for the integrity of other people that are playing in the bracket, right? Like, if you only had, because there are instances where like you could have 15 god tier players with 5,000 hours in the game. They're really good shooters. They're all PC players. And then you've got five people that really fucking suck at the game, but they're the only other five people that you could find to make numbers, right? There's a world where if you played in a 20v20 with that sort of setup, you would perform worse than if you just brought your 15 great players, because that's now five people on your team that can shit the bed and lose gunfights and give away their position, crash vehicles and stuff like that. So to allow those people to like opt into a different experience than other people that are playing 20v20 elsewhere in the bracket have is just weird, even if it's not actually, an immediate negative, if that makes sense. It's just weird. Consistency should be like your thing. That's what separates scrimmages from tournaments. Tournaments have clear rule sets that shouldn't change. There's a bunch of other stuff that tournaments should do as well, but that's the number one thing. The number two thing is to structure your tournament, what maps you play on, where the objectives are, what the rules and limitations are. Second rule should be that it's fun with those things as balancing tools. But number one is consistency. If you change your shit all the time, what are we fucking doing? What does the win mean for any given team at that point? So, letting that 15v15 play on Everon and not just kicking it to the 10v10, does that kind of make sense? Like, you can, from the tournament organizer's perspective, you can build in redundancy with that in mind. That's usually why you would have like a loser's bracket, where like, hey, if you're not able to make this match this weekend for the 20v20 because you've only got 15 guys, okay, well, we're going to bump you down to the 10v10s, just bring 10 guys. And if you don't like that, that's not our problem. You weren't able to bring what you said you were going to be able to bring. So you could do it that way, or you could just kick the people that weren't able to make numbers to the losers bracket. Maybe they're able to make a future date, or maybe you push them to later in the tournament to a date where people didn't have events with their families and stuff. But I just there something there was needed a better answer. It just feels weird. Just to touch real quick, moving on to the purpose and intent of the match analysis videos. Starting out with that kind of content, first of all, is rough from like 5 different angles. First of all, who the fuck knows anything about these teams? Most of these teams don't even know anything about themselves. Of the people that I've talked to maybe 6 teams total so far. One of them no longer in the season, or no longer participating. 4 of them said that they didn't do any scrimmaging beforehand, even though that they knew not only who the teams were, could reach out to the teams to set up scrimmages beforehand, and just decided to not do it. So like people didn't even practice per se for this. Sorry, a little bit of a distraction over there in the background. So the content would be better and more consistent and would offer more insight if there was stuff to dig into there. There just currently isn't. I don't know who these teams are. I don't know if they started a week ago. I don't know if they started 3 years ago, right? And then you would assume that if all that information was kind of known and you could lean on that, you could comment NBA style or sports style, like, well, they just had a big roster change, and they actually kind of disintegrated about a year ago and then reconstituted and took the lessons that they learned from like their participation before and applied it moving forward. They used to be really good at mortars and timings, and then they kind of decided that that was really only held by like people with 1 or 2 roles, and then once they lost to those people, they couldn't lean on those things anymore, so they had to find a different way to kind of bring it to the other team. And can't mention any of that shit in any of the match analysis videos. So the match analysis videos are really clear cut, like, hey, here's literally what's happening on the screen, and here's what I think it means, or here's what it could mean for you, or here's what's happening on the screen, this is happening, and then because of that, this happens, and here's what you can learn from that for your team, right? It's very cut and dry. It's not very flashy or exciting, and that's just one of the reasons why. Another reason for why it's so cut and dry and bland is there's no shared culture, and there's no shared knowledge base for any of these fucking teams, right? GSA, you could argue that being in the same Discord space means that you have an opportunity to reach out to another team to ask like how they're doing something, springboard ideas and questions and stuff like that. That's not gonna fucking happen. That doesn't happen organically. That doesn't happen anywhere else. Being in the same shared space doesn't do that. You almost effectively have to force people to do that. But this is in its first year. The scene is really in its first year, if we're considering that. I know that there were like some previous events where people gave it a go, and then the tournaments blew up in the middle of it, right? This is ARCL season 2, not season 1, for a reason. But because of that, it's not a lot of, hey, don't do that, do that. There's not a lot of people to like leave teams and go to other teams and bring some of that knowledge with them, the cross pollination and stuff like that. So you've got teams that have absolutely zero knowledge of why it's important to roll out a main as quick as possible once you're allowed to. You've got Goblins versus Rome, where like the baseline for these teams is just so fucking different. The buy-in is so different. And that just that feeds into it too, for the match analysis being bland. And then two, the video covering a match isn't meant for the participants. It could be in the future, season 3 ARCL. It'd be cool to see shadowcasters. That makes and breaks that model of learning. If you don't give a fuck about that as a tournament organizer, then obviously you're not going to push for shadowcasting. Don't then also claim that you know what's best for the scene. Eat a fucking dick. But like, if you're just working off of caster, listen, the caster's job is to make things look flashy while offering some insights into what's going on that isn't immediately viewable just from the recording alone. Do I feel like that's happening? No, not gonna lie. But Cian's really young. I don't know tactical gaming. I listen. At least there's a recording, okay? There could be no caster, for sure. But you can't you can't really work with just the casted perspective because it's jumpy. It floats around, it hovers over people's shoulders, and then the camera's 20 feet away looking at something completely different. You'll walk away from gunfights and you won't see how they turned out. Right? So um, that makes it really rough. Because there are potentially really big teaching moments and learning lessons that you just don't even know happened because you just never saw it. Uh, moving on, where are we at time wise? 45 minutes, basically done. What will and won't happen with the scene, and what shouldn't happen? I think I meant to put what should happen. Longevity from a macro time scale. At this rate, if and this is a little bit of a fucked statement because I'm doing stuff next year, but um, if ARCL remains as the only event that's happening from year to year, and it only happens once a year, the scene will die so quick, so quickly. Um, Scrimmages, events are held with tournaments in mind. You don't scrimmage when the next tournament is 6 months away. You definitely don't scrimmage when it's more than 6 months away. You don't hold trainings, right? Nothing matters. You're only really scrimmaging. That drive really only exists if you're like 3 months away from the event. So, what you should really be doing from a scene perspective, not from a tournament organizer perspective. I mean, I'd argue that you should be doing it from a tournament organizer's perspective, but if you don't want to take up that role, if you don't want to fill that need, that's cool. Other people will do it. There should be 3 to 4 events a year, so that way you're always kind of like getting ready for something that's coming up soon, but it's not super far away. Because what happens uh, when there's a long off season is people that really listen. There's always going to be people that leave your team or your organization or your staff or the scene in general just because people get new jobs, schedules change, babies are born, people get divorced, all that stuff. Not talking about that. Talking about even in ideal conditions, long off seasons mean that people get bored, people get burnt out on the game. Competitive for a bunch of people that are participating right now, I'd be willing to bet, because it's one of the main reasons that people form competitive scenes is when the game itself isn't enough, right? So if you set that period of time, if you have a long off season in between events, and therefore people don't really want to fucking scrimmage because what are we going to scrimmage for? People will just leave for that reason. They'll get bored. They'll join another team, or they'll make their own inferior thing, or they'll just more often than not they just fucking leave the game. And that sucks because you wouldn't have lost those people if there was just something going on, right? So as it stands, longevity of the game looks a little rough, looks a little suspicious. Uh, I'm gonna mention it at the end of the video, but don't worry about that because that's not gonna be a problem. Um, Quality of life is also kind of shaky, kind of looking a little rough. This will become more evident as we get to the end of season 2 for ARCL and people have played through multiple matches because you have to figure that teams aren't scrimmaging. Most teams aren't scrimmaging in addition to the tournament, right? You don't play your first match and go, wow, we got shit on. Let's scrimmage 3 times before our next match. Most people aren't going to do that. Most people don't give a fuck. This is the match that they play in is the stimulus to play in this context or in this framework. So the quality of life for the scene right now is in the fucking gutter, and people are really gonna feel that and probably be able to articulate that by the end of the season. Not mandating completely separate roles, right? Your light machine gunner isn't also your AT gunner. Your grenadier is not also your AT gunner. Your fucking sniper doesn't get to have a rocket launcher on its back. I made that specific reference to all three of those things because I'm sure in our heart of hearts, listening, the only people that are listening to this video care about the competitive scene. We're 40, 50 minutes into this recording. If you're still here with me, you're one of the ones, okay? We want a consistent, reasonable challenge. You listening right now, you would prefer if armor was viable. If you pushed into Montanak right now, if you had a match to play tomorrow in a 20v20 against a team in ARCL Season 3 or something, right? You would enjoy if you pushed into Montanak and there was a lav there and you didn't have 15 fucking people standing nearby that could kill it. If you only had one person that could kill that thing and he's on the other side of town and you just kind of have to hunker down for a little bit, try not to get killed by the thing while also, killing the guy that goes to breach into your building or something like that, throw a nade over the back, the backyard fence so that way the lav doesn't see your tracers, all that shit. That's fucking interesting and that's cool. You have to hold out now. You can't just, oh, yep, lav's gone already. And then if you're an armor player, that makes you feel so much more substantial, important, needed. You could be the fucking linchpin that really turns your match around. You could be an hour and 40 minutes into your 2-hour match, and you could turn that around, right? You can't have that right now because everyone can carry a rocket launcher around. Anyone can be an anti-tank role. Anyone can be a sniper. Anyone can be a light machine gunner, right? I made the comment before that, if you have an automatic weapon in the game and you're not just fucking hosing through bullets with tracers, you are explicitly avoiding a meta that exists and is encouraged in the scene because no one else has the fucking balls to say no to that, right? Wouldn't that be way more impactful from a planning perspective and people management, or if you were that role, if you could only have one guy per squad with a saw, you want to, you'll see it. You'll fucking see it at the end. I promise. So quality of life right now, looking really shaky. Again, don't worry about it. We're going to fix that next year. I guarantee you we're going to fix that next year. It's going to be all right. Also, just a quick mention as my last thing for this. The scene, and I love getting this in, because this is, if the scene is still kicking, 3 years from now, and we're Arma 4 has been announced, we're about to, transfer everything over to Arma 4, and I can point back to early ass episodes like this and go, see, I was right. You were wrong. The scene should never involve money to any degree, ever, period, nothing. People that are caught betting on matches, right, should be banned because that's just inherently fucked virtues and values. If you're competing, if you're doing this thing for reasons just playing the game and playing with your guys isn't good enough, fucking leave. We don't want you here. Money is the biggest accelerant for toxicity and just weird fucking just no. None of these tournaments should ever be played for prize pool money. Even if the prize pool is money to a specific charity. Nope. Not as a prize. If you want to fucking donate to charity, cool. That's great as an individual. None of this should ever revolve around any of that at any point. Now, I do think it's fucking cool to have merch. like the Left 4 Dead 2 competitive. If anyone's in the Discord, they'll see me throwing up the fucking links every now and then because they're going through and doing their big tournament. Um, they have a monetary prize pool, which I dislike. But also that game's fucking like 20 something years old, so maybe that's what it takes. Fuck, that sucks. But like, yeah, maybe that's just what it needs to be. Um, but uh, the streamers that cast it have like merch for the scene. They've got like coffee mugs and t-shirts and hoodies and like plaques and stuff. I love that shit. I think that's fucking cool. I always really wanted that at a squad. Regardless of what role I was playing in a team or whatever, like I always look back, and if I could go into my closet and look at like a collection of t-shirts, or like if I could look back on my wall and see like plaques from like, you know, oh my fucking god, what's wrong with me? I can't even really remember the names of the tournaments. Maybe that means I'm a fraud. But like if I could go back and look at the tournament t-shirts for like 2020, 2021, 2022, that'd be fucking cool as hell. And that's not really like a financial incentive. You're not gonna fucking resell that t-shirt for $200 or whatever, right? So that would be cool. But next, the update from Experimental came across basically straight over, no real additions or changes. I've already done sort of a thoughts video on that as it was announced to Experimental. I'm sure that no one else is going to agree with me on my position with the subject matter. First of all, if you think that far hide matters in the context of competitive, I've got a fucking bridge to sell you. Yeah, far hide's really going to change the outcome of that gunfight in that house, huh? Yeah, so much of your fighting occurs at distances longer than 200 meters. Yeah, right. Yeah, got you. Far hide explicitly advantages people that go prone the second that they get shot at. Which, by the way, when you go from running or crouching to prone, I know exactly where you just laid down. I'm just going to shoot that spot. Oh, I killed you through the bush. Well, it's crazy. I must be a hacker. Or I know I just aimed down from where your body dropped. Right. So that's fucking really funny. The AI changes for like the camo nets and stuff. What a fucking joke. It's great. Fantastic. That's sarcasm, by the way. It's fucking stupid. The AI can't see you through camo nets. Hey, look, there's a camo net right here. Wow, that's crazy. I can see that doorway. The AI standing there can't look at me? What? What are we talking? And I mentioned it before, but like the AI are supposed to be dual role because you can spawn in on a lot of these servers your own AI to defend a base. So you both want the AI to perform when the enemy is here and not be brain dead, but you also don't want them to be cracked out of their mind Terminators when you're pushing into an objective. Like if you're fighting against, the if it's the beginning of a match and you're trying to take it from the independent faction. So what a fucking backward step there. Just horrible. And everything else that kind of came with the update is fucking whatever. I do want to touch on really quick the experience loss that they pushed in the update. I would assume that that's a global balancing update, and you can't turn that off without modding your server. So everyone that's running a vanilla server just is stuck with that fucking experience. What a joke. I got team killed twice hopping into this match, and I lost rank both times. I just, yeah, eh, not, not a fan, not great. Two, like, how does that feel as a new player? If you're shit at the game and you just die 3, 4 times because you don't even understand what the enemy team's uniform looks like, now you're a renegade? Is there a cap? Can you only ever go to the start of your rank? Do you only go negative You can't go down rank, but you can lose progress in your rank. How does it work? And then just like to touch on, because I kind of teased it, Reforger game, just as a game, not competitive scene comment, but just game comment. The quality of life, what updates introduce what, balancing, hot fixes, inclusion, what's worth their time, will decrease with time in the lead up to Arma 4. You see it now. People that have like senior positions on the dev team are leaving for other development companies. This probably means that A, the people that are on the dev team for Reforger probably not making fantastic money. And secondly, even if they are making like the same paycheck because they all work for the same company as the people that are making Arma 4, there are probably people that are working on Reforger that have job titles that they will not keep when Arma 4 comes out, right? There are like department leads, art leads, and stuff that when Arma 4 comes out, they're going to go back to being like Joe Schmo under Jim over there. It's probably a bunch of people that know that. It's probably a bunch of people that don't like that. It's probably a bunch of people that are working on the game right now and they're just trying to work on their CVs for when they leave to go to another dev studio in 2 months, 3 months, a year. So good luck. Good luck. And then also, as we see how they handle certain changes and updates and hot fixes and bugs with Reforger, how many people are losing their excitement for Arma 4, right? Arma 3 had a little bit of charm to it because the technical jump between Arma 2 and Arma 3 was really vast, significantly better, um, significantly better visuals. The framework of like how everything worked and handled. Yeah, it's buggy for sure, but like way better, way different from Arma 2. How much of a jump are we expecting from Arma 3 to Arma 4? And a bit of people's nostalgia and enjoyment of Arma 3 came from mainly how it played in the moment, right? After GTA 5, how many people are going back to GTA 4 or looking fondly back on that and going like, God, the driving in that game was revolutionary for its time. Mm. That's actually right. Yes. Yes. No one's thinking that in the lead up to GTA 6. Well, people aren't gonna. That actually might have been a horrible example, and I might have not had anywhere to really go with that. I think I was basically just trying to say, like, Arma 4, they knew with Arma 3 that God, hold on. Let me compose myself for a second. They knew that with Arma 3, they wanted to make things look more realistic, and I'd argue that they did that. I'd think that the only real limitations that they had were like density limitations with like the game engine. That's why the first map that came out was Altus, arguably. So you had like a large technical play area, and they really leaned into like the sandboxness of it, and that's kind of why they justified having all those giant open spaces and fields and stuff. But also it was a game engine limitation from the start, that they kind of just dressed up, right? Does anyone feel like they pulled the right lessons from Arma 3 with that? Because they didn't really do anything with Arma 3. Arma 3 survived and thrived because of like community made content and didn't really have anything to do with the actual game. So like what are the chances, like Starfield is a good example, I guess, right? Like they made Starfield as this giant boring expanse and just kind of assumed that people would fill it in with whatever they wanted, and then people just didn't. All right. shouldn't the expectation be that Arma 4 is going to be that same sort of a thing, where it's like actually going to have more or less the same physics as Arma 3, but now you can jump kind of like you can in Reforger, right? Obviously. But like, how significantly better are the visuals in this than Arma 3? Are those visuals only better because they actually placed down like their own forests and stuff? Show me a forest in Altus. There's like 3 areas of the map where they exist. If you turn on your shadows and settings and stuff like that and kind of crank stuff out, doesn't look like significantly different from this, in my opinion anyway. The scale of everything is obviously bigger, but maybe that's a shit take. I'm allowed to have those. Anyways, events for 2026 and 2027. Closing this out. In December, we're gonna announce. This is not Camo Net Supremacy. This is me / what I'm calling Bambi, BAMBI, as like a banner. We're gonna announce dates for our tournament in December. I can tell you already right now, though, it's going to be the beginning of summer. Because it seems like AirCL wants to take sort of the end of summer, early fall time period. And that's going to be for the AAS bracket. And then in spring is going to be sort of our fuck around pistols bracket. That's going to be like our 10v10. And then probably late fall, we'll have our what'll probably be our HQC bracket. Kind of shooting from the hip and spitballing. We're gonna have an infantry only bracket with sort of like small scale only rifles. God, it's rough to talk about because I'm gonna throw a lot of people off because the conventions for like splitting up the experience is completely different from what ARCL are willing to do at this current time. At least when I talked to them, it was. So there's going to be an infantry only experience. There's going to be, and that's going to have maps that explicitly reflect that for basing and stuff like that. It's not necessarily just going to be 10v10s, but it's kind of what I think is going to be better in my heart of hearts. And then you just allow people for that bracket to split into multiple groups. So like if your Discord or your quote unquote team community, however you want to say it, has 30 people in it that are active and playing the game, then you can make 3 teams and participate in the same bracket. It's not really played for keeps or like you don't get a prize for winning or whatever. It's just, just a stimulus to practice and play the game. And so that'll be spring is kind of what I'm talking about. Spring, and then we'll do sort of the pistols fuck around bracket for fun. Probably around that time frame as well, and then we'll do early summer or the beginning of summer, so like June will be the like conflict or mixed modes, mixed infantry, armor, helicopters, whatever. And then late fall will be hypothetically HQC. And then for the rest of 2026, we'll still be doing our map playtests, but that'll be probably reaching out to specific teams to participate in that. So, thanks for sticking with me. I thought I was going to be able to make this in like 40 minutes, 45 minutes, but you know me, I'm a big rambler.